The news of Robert Baratheon's death came like a storm over King's Landing. Ned Stark stood alone in the Tower of the Hand, looking out over the city, his face cold and heavy with thought. He held the king's last words in his hand, a letter naming him Lord Protector until Robert's son came of age. But Ned already knew the truth. That boy Joffrey wasn't Robert's son. He was Jaime Lannister's bastard. The whole kingdom was sitting on a lie, and the truth was about to burn everything down. Littlefinger had warned him not to play the game so openly. "You're too honorable for this city," he said with a half-smile. But Ned Stark didn't play games. He did what was right, always. So instead of bending the knee to Joffrey, Ned did something else. He sent a raven to River Run, calling Catelyn to bring their daughters home. He sent another to Winterfell, warning Robb. And then, he did what no one expected. He took the City Watch with him, along with Sir Barristan Selmy and a few men he could trust. They marched into the throne room while the Lannisters still celebrated Robert's death and Joffrey's new crown. Cersei sat like a queen, smug and sure of herself. Joffrey was on the throne, grinning like a child who thought he had won the game. Ned stepped forward, the great sword ice in his hand, shining under the torches. "Lord Tywin Lannister," Ned said loudly, turning toward the man who had just entered the room, calm and cold as ever. "You are charged with treason against the crown and House Stark, for ordering the death of children, for plotting against the king, and for placing a false heir upon the Iron Throne." Tywin didn't flinch. He only raised one eyebrow. "You would accuse me of treason, Stark? Do you even understand what you're doing?" "I understand exactly," Ned said. "And this time, justice won't wait." Chaos exploded around them. Cersei screamed for the guards. Jaime Lannister reached for his sword, but the City Watch turned their spears toward the Lannisters. Varys stood quietly in a corner watching, not moving. Littlefinger had vanished from sight. Joffrey shouted, "I'm the king! I command you to stop!" But no one listened. Sir Barristan, loyal to Robert's memory, took hold of Joffrey's arm and pulled him down from the throne. "Until your blood is proven royal, boy, you are no king." Ned looked Tywin in the eye, holding ice with both hands. "For the sake of the realm," he said, "you must answer for your crimes." And then, in front of the court, the lords and the gods, Eddard Stark used ice to take Tywin Lannister's head. Blood spilled across the floor. The throne room was silent. The Lion of Casterly Rock was dead, but the war had only just begun. The sound of Tywin's head hitting the stone echoed in the throne room like a bell announcing war. Blood poured across the floor, thick and red, pooling, beneath the Iron Throne. The same throne Tywin had schemed for years to control now stood high above his broken, lifeless body. Eddard Stark didn't look away. He kept his eyes on the corpse as he lowered ice, the great sword of House Stark, now dripping with the blood of one of the most feared men in Westeros. Around him, everyone stood frozen. The silence stretched so long it began to feel like the entire world had stopped breathing. Then Cersei screamed, "No! You'll pay for this, you northern dog! You've doomed your house, your children, all of them!" Ned turned his cold eyes toward her. "He ordered the death of my son. He ordered the murder of Elia Martell and her children. He supported a false heir to the throne. That is treason in every corner of this kingdom." But Cersei was beyond reason. Her golden hair shook with fury. "He was the head of my house. He was the richest man in the realm. You think the Lannisters will let this go unpunished?" Sir Barristan stepped between them. "My lady, the Lord Hand has acted on the king's final orders. Robert named Lord Eddard as protector of the realm until the rightful heir is proven. If you disagree, you may raise your claim at a great council. Not here, not now." Ned knew. He had bought only moments, not peace. Already the Lannister guards inside the Red Keep were spreading the news. Some drew swords, others fled. The City Watch held their lines, loyal, for now, to the gold Ned had promised through Littlefinger. But Ned had no illusions. Money didn't buy loyalty. It only rented it for a short time. Joffrey was in chains, his mouth still running. "You'll regret this. My grandfather was the only one who protected this realm, you traitor!" Ned moved closer to the boy. "You are not Robert's son. That truth will be made known to the realm. You will be treated with respect while under guard. No harm will come to you unless you bring it upon yourself." The next few hours moved like a blur. Ned ordered the Red Keep secured. Cersei was placed under house arrest in her chambers. Jaime Lannister had vanished somewhere in the chaos. Escaped, no doubt, with gold and fury in his heart. But Ned knew the real storm was not in the castle. It was riding now from Casterly Rock. That evening, he sat alone in his solar, cleaning. Ice. The sword was older than memory, passed down through countless generations of Starks. Its wide blade still held the heat of Tywin's blood. Catelyn arrived late in the night, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You did what?" "I executed." "A traitor," Ned said simply. "You executed Tywin Lannister, Ned. You know what that means." He nodded. "Yes. War." Catelyn sat beside him, her hands shaking. "Robb is already gathering our banners in the north. Lysa has sent word she will not get involved. The Vale will stay neutral, she says." Ned clenched his jaw. "She will. Change her mind when the Lannisters are at her gates." "But are we ready, Ned? Truly ready? The north is strong, but Casterly Rock has wealth and steel. They'll come for us with fire in their hearts. We're not alone," he said. "Stannis will back the truth. He has the strongest claim." "You think Stannis Baratheon will fight for you? He barely tolerates anyone, let alone allies. He is lawful. That's what matters now." 3 days later, a raven arrived from Riverrun. Lord Hoster Tully gave his full support to House Stark. Robb had crossed the Neck, marching south with 15,000 men. The north was on the move, but with that raven came another, from Casterly Rock. It was written in crimson ink, sealed with a golden lion. The letter was short. "You murdered the Warden of the West. We will answer in kind. The lion does not forgive, nor does he forget. Sir Kevin Lannister." The letter was a declaration of war, not just against Ned, but against House Stark, the Riverlands, and any who stood behind them. At dawn, the bells rang for Tywin's body, carried out of the Red Keep and sent back to Casterly Rock in a sealed, black coffin. Cersei refused to come down. Joffrey cursed everyone. Jaime remained in hiding. And Ned stood once again at the edge of fire and blood. The people in the streets chanted his name. "Lord Stark! The North remembers!" But the cheers felt hollow. He had done what was right, but right didn't always mean safe. That night, Ned gathered his daughters. "Sansa, Arya," he said softly, "you're going home." Sansa sobbed. "But what about you, father?" "I have work to do here," he said. "The realm needs justice, and sometimes justice has a cost." He looked out the window again. The fires of war were already lighting the horizon. The raven flew through smoke-filled skies, dodging the rising columns of ash from burning fields. War had begun. 3 weeks had passed since Eddard Stark executed Tywin Lannister in the throne room, and already Westeros was tearing at its seams. The Riverlands were bleeding, the North was marching, and every noble house had been forced to choose a side, the Stark wolf or the Lannister lion. Inside the Red Keep, the air was colder than it should have been. Even in the southern sun, the halls felt tight and silent. Tension crawled through every crack like a shadow waiting to strike. Ned stood before the Iron Throne, not sitting on it, never that. He refused it. "I am no king," he had said plainly, when the lords urged him to take the seat. I will not rule from a chair made of swords. Instead, he governed as Lord Protector, just as Robert had written. He held daily council with Sir Barristan, Varys, Maester Pycelle, though he barely trusted the last two. And he kept Sir Aramer and 10 Stark guards at his side at all times, because he knew what was coming. Not just war, assassins, spies, poison. In the wine, he had taken a lion's head, and now the pride would come. The first message came in the form of a body, a stable boy, no older than 10, found strangled behind the kitchens. No one admitted to knowing who he was. The master of horses swore the boy wasn't his. But Ned knew what it meant. A warning. The second message came clearer. One of Ned's own men, Jory Cassell's cousin, had been found gutted in Flea Bottom, his chest carved with a lion's paw. The City Watch claimed it was robbery. Ned knew better, but what frightened him more than anything was how quiet Cersei had become. She hadn't spoken a word in days. She sat in her chamber like a statue, dressed in black, staring at a single candle flame. She refused food. She didn't weep, didn't rage. Even Varys said, "There is danger in silence, my lord." She plots. But Ned didn't act. He had promised himself not to be like Tywin. He would not murder children or lock away queens without cause. He would hold justice with honor. Then came the third message. Arya was gone. She had been on her way to board a ship with Sansa, under heavy guard. But the ship never left. The captain was found dead, stabbed through the eye. The Stark guards were slaughtered, their bodies dumped into Blackwater Bay. No sign of Arya. Sansa arrived back at the Red Keep in tears, too shaken to speak for 2 days. Ned didn't shout, didn't cry. He simply sat at the edge of Arya's empty chamber and placed her sword, needle, on the bed. He felt the rage rising inside him. Not fire, cold. The kind of cold only the North could know. "You have to fight fire with fire, Ned," Catelyn said, her voice raw. "You can't keep waiting for the next strike. We must send one of our own." "And become like them?" he asked, but his voice was already distant. "You executed Tywin Lannister," she said firmly. "There is no going back now. If Arya is alive, we must make the Lannisters bleed until they give her back." Ned stared at his reflection in ice. It didn't look like him anymore. A few days later, Robb arrived at the gates of King's Landing, leading 20,000 Northmen. The banners of House Stark and House Tully flew high above their camp. Ned met him outside the walls. His son had changed. The boy who once laughed at Bran's jokes was now a man dressed in steel and leather, hardened by travel and grief. "Mother told me," Robb said after a long silence. "About Arya." Ned only nodded. "I want to ride west," Robb said. "Casterly Rock. Burn their lands, break their gates, make them feel the cold." Ned looked into his son's eyes and saw the same fire he used to see in Robert during the rebellion, a hunger for justice or vengeance. "I need you here," Ned said quietly. "If I fall, the realm will need a Stark in the capital, one with strength and patience." Robb looked down, jaw tight. "What do we do then? Wait for another of ours to die?" "No," Ned said. "We send a raven to Casterly Rock." Robb raised his eyebrows. "With an offer," Ned added. The letter he wrote to Sir Kevin Lannister was short. "Return Arya Stark unharmed, and King's Landing shall grant your family safe passage from the capital. Refuse, and war will not knock. It will break down your doors." The raven left at dawn, but that night, a fire broke out in the Tower of the Hand. Half the upper floor was burned. 2 of Ned's guards died in the smoke. Cersei's door remained locked. The next morning, Sir Barristan entered the council chamber with a pale face. "They found Arya," he said slowly. Ned stood so fast his chair tipped over. "She was in the black cells, drugged, bruised, but alive." "How long?" Ned asked. since the day she vanished. And now the truth was clear. Cersei had kept her hidden all along, a bargaining piece, a threat, a weapon. Ned stood, his eyes dark with fury. "She took my daughter," he said softly. Then he turned to Robb. "Bring me the key to her cell." The torchlight flickered against the walls of the dungeons beneath the Red Keep. The air smelled of wet stone, rot, and secrets. Eddard Stark walked in silence, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat of judgment. Behind him came Sir Barristan Selmy, face grim as a man walking beside death. Robb followed too, his hand never leaving the hilt of his sword. In Ned's hand was the key. The key to her cell. Cersei Lannister had taken his daughter, hidden her beneath the castle, drugged her, bruised her, and waited, knowing Ned wouldn't stoop low enough to look for her here. He had been too honorable, too slow. Now, there would be no more waiting. He stopped before the cell door. The iron bars were rusted, the lock old but strong. From inside, they could hear quiet breathing, not frightened, not sobbing, steady. Ned pushed the key in, turned it slowly, and the door creaked open. Arya sat cross-legged on the stone floor. Her clothes were dirty. Her lip was split. But her eyes, those fierce gray Stark eyes, looked up at him with fire. "You took your time," she said softly. Ned fell to his knees and pulled her into his arms. She stiffened at first. She'd been down here too long, touched by people she didn't trust. But then she melted into him, silent, just breathing. Robb knelt beside them. "Little sister," he whispered, brushing hair from her face. "We thought you were gone." Arya pulled back. "I tried to fight them. Bit one of them. He bled all over me." Ned almost smiled. "That's my girl." But the smile faded as quickly as it came. He looked at Ser Barristan. "Did she ever leave this cell?" The old knight shook his head. "No. The jailer swears. He was paid in gold. Saw no reason to report it. He'll be tried tomorrow." Ned rose slowly, lifting Arya into his arms like he used to when she was small. "Take her to Maester Tobo. Give her a bath, clean clothes, something warm to eat. Nothing happens to her now." "Nothing." Robb nodded and disappeared up the stairs with his sister. Then Ned turned, eyes hollow but sharp. "Where is Cersei?" "They found her still in her chambers, dressed in her finest gown of crimson and gold, sitting at her vanity, brushing her long golden hair like nothing had changed. The room was lit with dozens of candles. It smelled of perfume, not fear. She didn't look surprised when the guards entered. "Come to gloat, Stark," she said, turning slightly toward him. "Found your little wolf, did you?" Ned stepped closer. "You drugged her. Kept her in a dungeon like a beast." "If she had died—" "She didn't," Cersei said calmly. "I made sure of that. A dead girl would make you a martyr. A missing one keeps you quiet." "You call that quiet?" Ned asked, his voice like ice breaking on a lake. "You set fire to the Tower of the Hand. You butchered my men. You carved a lion into a boy's chest. And now you speak like you've done nothing wrong?" Cersei finally looked him in the eyes. No fear, only contempt. "You executed my father." "He ordered the death of children," Ned said. "So did you," she snapped. "The day you killed him, you signed my son's death sentence." Ned stared at her, his face stone. "There is no more mercy," he said. "Not for you." She stood, straightened her dress, and walked to him slowly. "Will you kill me, Lord Stark? Here? Now? With your northern blade and your cold eyes? Or will you try to be honorable again?" Ned didn't speak. "You want war," she whispered. "Then take it. I'll haunt you from the grave. You've only killed a lion's body. The roar lives on." Ser Barristan stepped forward, laying a hand on Ned's shoulder. "My lord." Ned nodded once. "She is to be imprisoned. deep in the Red Keep. No contact, no sunlight. Until her trial. Cersei smiled. You're still a coward after all. But Ned had already turned away. That night, the Raven returned from Casterly Rock. The letter bore no words, only a small box, tied in gold ribbon. Inside the box was a hand, severed, pale, and ringed with a Lannister seal. It was Sir Keevan's. There was no signature, no explanation, just blood on silk. Ned handed the box to Robb and said quietly, "They've chosen chaos." Robb's eyes burned. "Then we give them war." By morning, banners were flying from the Red Keep. The wolf of House Stark, the trout of House Tully, the stag of House Baratheon, sent by Raven from Dragonstone after Stannis declared support for Ned's cause. The city was being fortified. Ships from White Harbor docked in Blackwater Bay. The Vale remained silent. The Reach watched from afar, and from the west. Word came that Tyrion Lannister had taken control of Casterly Rock. He had declared his father's death unlawful, demanded vengeance, and was gathering armies of sellswords and bannermen alike. The imp was coming, not with wit this time, but with steel, and still. Ned didn't sleep. He walked the ramparts that night, watching the stars above King's Landing. So many stars, so much sky. He missed Winterfell, the quiet snow, the laughter in the halls, the way the fire cracked in the great hearth. But now, fire was all around him, and he was the one who had lit the first spark. He looked at ice, sheathed at his side, and whispered, "What have I done?" The war had no name yet, but everyone knew it had begun. From the cold towers of Winterfell to the sunlit streets of Old Town, ravens flew with the same message. Tywin Lannister is dead, executed by Eddard Stark. King's Landing is ruled by the North. And while the truth had many versions depending on who told it, one thing was certain. Westeros was split down the middle. Tyrion Lannister wasted no time. After his father's head was returned to Casterly Rock in a box wrapped in a Stark banner, he gathered what remained of House Lannister's power. Kevan was dead. Jaime was still missing. Cersei was imprisoned. That left Tyrion. He was clever, sharp, and now furious. He promised gold to the Golden Company across the sea. He hired 500 sellswords, promised them land and titles. He sent envoys to House Tyrell and whispered in their ears, "The North will not stop at Lannisters. When they're done with us, your flowers will be next to burn." Even though the Tyrells had no love for Lannisters, they had less love for a northern sword ruling King's Landing. They began to listen. But the most dangerous letter Tyrion sent was not to a lord or a mercenary, it was to Dorne. In the Water Gardens, Prince Doran Martell held the letter with trembling hands. His face, always calm, remained unreadable as he looked out over the water. But inside, something twisted. Tywin Lannister had ordered the murder of Elia Martell and her children. Her body had been broken in that very Red Keep that now flew the Wolf's banner. For years, Doran had waited, quietly, patiently, for justice. Now it had come, but not from him, from the North. "My prince," said Oberyn, the Red Viper, standing beside him. "They did what we never could. The lion was slain, not by our spear, but by a man with honor." Doran looked at his younger brother. "And now, that man rules the capital. What do you make of it?" Oberyn smiled. "I say we ride, not to fight, to join." Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark stood before the small council with dark circles under his eyes. Word from the west was growing worse. Tyrion had taken the rock and was fortifying it. Bandits roamed the riverlands. Gold cloaks were stretched, thin, trying to keep the city calm. And the whispers in the taverns, they were turning. "Some say you're no better than the Mad King," Varys warned softly. "That you beheaded Lord Tywin without trial, imprisoned the Queen, and brought northern soldiers into the south like conquerors. I gave him a chance to answer for his crimes, Ned said. He refused. And the queen kidnapped my daughter. Yes, said Varys, but common folk don't read history. They listen to fear. Ned looked to Ser Barristan. And what does the common soldier say? They follow orders, Barristan said firmly. But they watch their commanders. If your men act with dignity, the realm will remember it. It was the best assurance he'd get. Still, Ned couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in the wind. The war wasn't just swords and banners anymore. It was whispers, rumors, poison in cups and lies in letters. And the worst part, he knew how easily honor could drown in that sea. Arya recovered quickly. Maester Tobo said she had the heart of a direwolf. She was already training in the yard again, bruised but grinning, sparring with Sir Aramer like she hadn't just escaped death. Ned watched her from his balcony. She didn't know how close she'd come to being a pawn on someone else's board, or worse, a sacrifice. He didn't tell her everything. Just enough to say Cersei had tried to hide her. The rest, she'd learn in time. But Sansa was not so forgiving. I want her to die, she said one morning, her voice quiet but sharp. Cersei, I want her to feel what I felt when Arya was gone. Ned placed a hand on her shoulder. We don't become them, Sansa. That's not our way. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. Even still, Ned could see it. The innocence was fading from both his daughters. King's Landing stole it slowly, the way wolves lost their fur in the heat. A week later, a ship from Dorne docked in Blackwater Bay. Prince Oberyn Martell stepped off with 10 spears, all dressed in red and gold. His stride was as smooth as wine, and his smile sharp enough to cut silk. He walked straight to the Red Keep and demanded to see Ned Stark. When they met in the Great Hall, Oberyn didn't bow. You avenged my sister, he said. That is a debt we do not forget. I didn't do it for Dorne, Ned replied. I did it for justice? Oberyn chuckled. Justice is rarely pure, but even dirty water can wash away old blood. They spoke for hours. Oberyn offered an alliance, Dornish spears, ships, and silence, in exchange for 2 things, safety for Dorne and the right to try Cersei for her role in Ilya's death when the time came. Ned agreed. A new alliance was born, but the game was not done yet. That very night, Ned awoke to a raven clawing at his window. He opened it himself. The letter was short. The Golden Company has landed at Crackclaw Point, 10,000 strong. Tyrion leads them. The war was no longer distant. It was at his door. Ned looked down at ice, resting near the hearth. He whispered, to the steel, you started this. And deep down, he wondered if he'd ever finish it. The banners of war flapped above King's Landing like vultures circling a dying beast. From the walls, the soldiers could see sails on the horizon, black, gold, and blood red. The Golden Company had arrived, 10,000 swords, veterans of Essos, paid with Lannister gold, led by Tyrion Lannister, a man half the size of others, but twice as dangerous. Inside the Red Keep, Ned stood before a war map. Pins marked each movement. Crackclaw Point, Storm's End, River Run, the Reach. The Golden Company had moved fast, faster than any had expected. With no king to slow them, Tyrion acted without chains. Robb pointed at the river paths. We could strike them from the flank, split their force before they reach the city. No, Ned said. If we meet them outside, we lose the walls. King's Landing is crowded with small folk. I will not risk their lives for a field charge. Then, what? Robb asked. We wait for them to starve us out? Sir Barristan leaned forward. We still have allies in the Stormlands, and the Martells now stand with us. But Maester Pycelle, his voice shaking with fear, muttered, and what of the Reach? What of Old Town? They watch. but they do not. Move! The Tyrells wait to see who bleeds more. Ned turned away from the map. Let them watch. When the blood comes, they'll smell it soon enough. By nightfall, King's Landing was locked tight, every gate sealed, every ship tethered. Archers lined the walls. The North's men held steady. Dornish spears guarded the gates. And from the tallest tower, Ned watched the flames of the enemy camp grow brighter. That night, Arya came to him. She wore black leathers now, and her eyes had changed, sharper. She looked more like Lyanna every day. "I want to fight," she said. "You already have," Ned replied. "You survived what they couldn't break." "That's not enough," she whispered. "They came for us. They took me. I want to make them pay." Ned looked into her eyes, saw the pain, the steel. He wished he could take it from her. "You will fight," he said. "One day, but not in this battle. Not yet." She didn't argue, just nodded once. She understood. At dawn, the horns blew. The Golden Company marched to the gates. Tyrion came with them, armored in black and crimson, gold lions etched on his chestplate. His horse was small, but his presence large. He stood beneath the walls of the city with a scroll in his hand. "I seek audience," he called. "With Eddard Stark." Ned appeared on the battlements, eyes fixed on the brother of the woman who had taken his daughter, and the son of the man whose blood still stained his blade. "I'm listening," Ned called down. Tyrion unfurled the scroll. A royal decree, signed by Tommen Baratheon, son of Robert. It demands the immediate release of Queen Cersei and the restoration of Lannister lands. In return, we will spare the city. We offer peace. Ned's jaw tightened. "You bring 10,000 sellswords and you speak of peace?" "I bring what you made necessary," Tyrion replied calmly. "You beheaded my father. You imprisoned my sister. You tore the realm apart." "I did what your kings never had the spine to do," Ned said. "I chose justice over fear." "And now you'll reap the cost of that justice," Tyrion snapped. Ned leaned forward. "Tell me, Imp, did you really come all this way to die at my gates?" Tyrion looked up at him, and for the first time smiled. "No. I came to burn the gates down." At midday, the battle began. The Golden Company charged from the east and the south, hurling fire and steel. Siege ladders slammed against the walls. Arrows filled the sky. The ground shook as battering rams pounded the king's gate. Robb rode through the streets, commanding units, holding the lines. Dornish spears pierced wave after wave of invaders. Northern axes hacked through armored sellswords, but the numbers kept coming, like a tide of death. Inside the Red Keep, Arya stood at the highest tower with her bow, loosing arrows like lightning. She didn't miss. Ned fought alongside his men on the main gate. Ice gleamed in his hands, cutting down foes like wind cuts through snow. For every man he dropped, another took their place. Still, the North held, until the explosions started. Boom, boom, boom. Wildfire, Tyrion had unleashed the Mad King's legacy, green fire that swallowed everything. One section of the outer wall collapsed in flames. Soldiers screamed as their bodies turned to ash. Smoke poured into the city like a flood. "Fall back!" Ned shouted, dragging a wounded soldier from the rubble. But the enemy was inside now. They made it to the throne room. The final defense. Robb, bloodied, limping, stood at his father's side. Arya, bow in hand, had taken a dagger from a dead knight. The last of their men closed the gates, and then the doors burst open. Tyrion entered. "Alone. No guards?" Ned asked, raising ice. "No need," Tyrion said, breathing hard. "I didn't come to kill you, Stark. Could have fooled me. I came to end it." Ned frowned. Tyrion reached into his cloak and threw something to the floor, a scroll. Signed by Stannis Baratheon. A peace treaty, Tyrion said. Stannis takes the throne. The Lannisters return to Casterly Rock. Your family returns to the north. Dorne keeps its freedom. The Golden Company is paid and sent home. No more blood, just silence. Ned stared at him, stunned. Why? Tyrion shrugged. Because you were right. About my father. About the realm. But I had to try. I had to make you bleed just once. Ned bent down, picked up the scroll. You get one chance, Lannister. Break this, and I'll come to the rock myself. Tyrion smirked. Wouldn't expect less from a Stark. Days later, the war ended. Cersei was sent to Dorne for trial. Stannis took the throne. The North returned home, and ice, the sword that started. It all was placed back above the hearth in Winterfell. But Ned Stark never forgot the day he chose to cut off a lion's head, because peace had returned, but only for now.